The story opens with a boy, Kazu, 17 years old, facing an attack from an otherworldly creature. After completing its objective, Kazu becomes conflicted, uncertain whether to reveal the truth. Doubt lingers as he wonders if anyone would believe him. His thoughts drift to his friend Yu, making him question her sincerity. In the end, he decides to tell everyone the truth. Afterward, a celestial woman appears before him expressing gratitude. She acknowledges that he has defeated the demon kings and even the demon gods, ensuring peace for the next 5,000 years. Reassured, he realizes there must have been a reason to face these formidable enemies. He is the first to have his achievements recognized, and the celestial woman offers him a choice to ascend to the heavens, receive another life, or return to his original world. Reflecting on his past, he remembers his life as a middle-aged worker in a black company, trapped in a cycle of unpaid overtime and overnight shifts. Although he has lived 17 years in a world of swords and magic, something still feels missing. Civilization here lags behind, and the world is filled with painful memories of death. With no reason to stay, he chooses to return to his original world. The celestial woman grants his wish, sending him back with a farewell. Before returning, he envisions himself once again as a middle-aged office worker, contemplating his first actions upon arrival. Quitting his job immediately crosses his mind, and he imagines leaving his resignation letter on his boss's desk. Another thought excites him even more, catching up on all the anime episodes he recorded but never had time to watch. The anticipation brings him unexpected joy. However, his thoughts shift to his powers and magic. He wonders whether they will remain after his reincarnation. He spent 17 years honing them, yet in this world they seem unnecessary. Even if they remained, it would be no more than an insignificant advantage. Before he can fully process everything, he suddenly finds himself on a football field, blood dripping from his nose. A football has struck him, and the players nearby react with amusement. They claim it was just a light kick, though it hit harder than expected. Dazed, Kazu struggles to understand what is happening. The players mock his confusion, asking if he remembers his name and the current date. Observing one of them closely, he realizes the boy looks exactly as he did in high school. The truth hits him that he is in Japan. His childhood friend Shiratori Yu rushes over in concern, alarmed by the blood on his face. Hearing her name from him after so long, she hesitates. He remembers her as the daughter of a powerful corporate executive, admired for her beauty and a beloved figure at school. She insists on taking him to the nurse's office. As he follows, he recalls their shared past but senses gaps in his memory. The football players watch, baffled by their interaction. One of them, irritated, prepares to kick the ball at him again. However, before it reaches him, he instinctively redirects it with a subtle movement, sending it straight into the player's face. She, witnessing this, is stunned. He, equally shocked, begins testing his powers. A simple focus on a nearby leaf confirms his abilities remain intact. Overwhelmed, he struggles to accept this reality. To verify the timeline, he asks her for the current year. She replies 1997. He freezes. The realization dawns on him this is the year the celestial goddess restored him to. He is once again 17. A quick calculation reveals an unsettling truth. Technically, he is now 60 years old. Without warning, he finds himself in the vastness of space. A protective barrier surrounds him, shielding him from the vacuum. Testing his limits, he discovers he can compress air, turn invisible, and fly at high speeds. Some spells remain untested, but his core abilities are intact. Understanding their full potential, he decides to push his body beyond its limits, tearing his muscles apart, only to heal them instantly with magic. Despite the pain, he repeats the process, refining his strength for this world. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Yu stands lost in thought, reflecting on childhood memories. She realizes she has not held his hand in years. The park where she stands reminds her of their first meeting in kindergarten, when he, small and lost, had smiled and invited her to play. They had ended up covered in mud, scolded but happy. Approaching the familiar bench where it all began, she stops abruptly. Her eyes widen in shock. There on the bench is blood. Suspended in space, he surveys the world below. The danger detection magic he placed on her reacts, sending a sharp pulse through him. He recalls how she had fussed over him before, trying to drag him to the nurse when he was in pain. It occurs to him that he activated the spell unconsciously, following habits from his past life. But he never expected it to actually trigger. His vision sharpens her as in danger. Without hesitation, he plunges toward Earth, his body cutting through the atmosphere like a meteor. Below, she stands alone, facing a Nordic figure, an immensely dangerous being, not human, but a dark valkyrie. No longer needing to search for Kazu, she activates her Gungnir skill, steeling herself for battle. The divine artifact's magic surges through her, a force she still struggles to control. The replica, designed to fight variants, should be powerful enough to tear through anything. And even if she is just an ordinary girl, she refuses to back down. As Kazu speeds toward the ground, he senses her magic intensifying. He never expected such creatures to exist on Earth, and judging by her predicament, she has gotten herself into something far more complicated than she realizes. Assessing the situation, his thoughts momentarily drift to his own appearance. It finally clicks he bears an uncanny resemblance to a famous creation. A sudden thrill runs through him, but there is no time to dwell on it. On the battlefield, she fights with everything she has. Her attacks, however, fail to deal any real damage. The Dark Valkyrie's strength far surpasses the training robots she had once struggled against. Even with the divine artifact in hand, the sheer gap in power is staggering. Recognizing the urgency, she activates Gungnir Edge mode, aiming to end the battle before she is completely overwhelmed. Above, he watches, genuinely impressed. Her power has grown immensely. Summoning every ounce of strength, she finally manages to defeat the monstrous being. As the creature falls, she barely has time to catch her breath before she notices more figures emerging from the shadows. 3 more monsters close in, radiating a dangerous aura. She barely managed to defeat one, and now there are 3. The realization leaves her frozen. The creatures advance, their expressions almost gleeful. Just as she braces for the worst, the ground trembles. Something crashes down, sending a shockwave rippling through the battlefield. Dust and debris swirl in the air. When it clears, Kazu stands before her. She stares, trying to process what she is seeing. He steps forward, placing himself between her and the approaching enemies. The monsters lunge. She cries out in fear, but he does not flinch. With an almost casual motion, he drives his hand through a creature's chest. For a moment, he observes the variant's heart in his grasp, wondering in astonishment if they truly have hearts. Before he can fully process this revelation, the heart crumbles into smoke. More creatures gather, weapons raised. She's still reeling from what she just witnessed, barely reacts. The monsters strike. He remains still. Then, without warning, he catches one of their weapons midair and, as if handling a flimsy toy, crushes it into dust. The fragments scatter in the wind. The battlefield falls silent. The monsters freeze. She stares in astonishment. He, unfazed, takes in the situation. Meanwhile, she asks in astonishment if he is truly her friend. After a brief moment of deliberation, he makes his decision. This is no longer just about survival. It is about truth. And so he reveals everything. His past, his reincarnation. Because today, he has returned. The scene shifts to his house where his sister Futaba calls out loudly, informing him that breakfast is ready. She rushes to his room, assuming he will be late as usual. But when she opens the door, she's taken aback to find him already up, standing and fully dressed. His greeting catches her off guard, and she's left in stunned silence. She, still processing, urges him to at least acknowledge her if he's awake. He quickly apologizes, explaining that he got lost in thought for a while. She's still incredulous, wonders how her usually tardy brother managed to wake up so early. As she mulls it over, he suddenly announces that he will make breakfast tomorrow, surprising her even more. She grabs him by the collar, questioning how he sees himself now, considering his usual inability to handle housework, even though he's been living alone for nearly 20 years. With a smile, he ruffles her hair and assures her that they'll help each other from now on. She checks the time and realizes he is running late. Meanwhile, he leaves for school to meet his friend Yu. He tells her that if a variant ever attacks, his existence will be erased. She, with a sad nod, asks if he remembers his parents. He, struggling with gaps in his memory, reassures her he does, but he wonders if he could have already fallen victim to the variants. He contemplates whether his past is connected to them. She suddenly apologizes, saying she didn't want to involve him if it was possible. With seriousness, she tells him that she can never forgive the variants and wishes to borrow power from another world. He, however, refuses, explaining that he experienced something similar when he tried to bring back her memories in his first life, a gap in his mind, much like what he's feeling now. He then asks her to fight alongside him. The scene shifts to their high school where he sits alone in class, lost in thought. He wishes he could appear cooler to her, but realizes that with the variants and everything, he has no understanding of the hidden truths of the world. He reminds himself that he's just a high school student and wonders how to learn more. He decides to ask her about it. Just then, she enters the classroom, calling out to him and offering lunch. Surprised by the gesture, he notices the entire class watching them. He asks why she acted so quickly. Before he can process it, she leans in, reminding him that they will fight together from now on and telling him that there are still many things left to explain. As they continue joking and discussing in the football ground, he starts reflecting on the sacred treasure they discussed earlier when their classmate, Kogala, approaches her. Jokingly, he claims she canceled his invite to sit with him and asks her to join him for lunch. She, looking serious, tells him that according to her family's rules, she's not allowed to meet anyone outside. But he, not taking no for an answer, grabs her hand and insists. Suddenly, Kazu uses his powers to push him back, causing him to lose his temper. Furious, he challenges him to a fight. She, scared, tries to stop them, but they decide to settle it in the Kendo dojo. Kazu is confused, questioning why all this is happening. Kogawa sarcastically tells him to put on his helmet, threatening to crack open his skull if he doesn't. Kazu points out that he isn't wearing a helmet, but Kogawa proudly claims to hold a black belt in Kendo and a spot in the football club, implying his superiority. He taunts him, claiming the fight will be easy. As the fight begins, Kazu realizes that he is targeting weak points with ruthless precision, resembling the tactics of a goblin horde. He counters his attacks, but the students around them cheer, leaving him wondering why they want to see him defeated. Kogawa, feeling confident, declares that if he wins, Kazu will never be allowed to get close to her. Kazu, perplexed, wonders why he should agree to such a condition. The fight intensifies, and just as Kogawa seems ready to land a decisive blow, Kazu strikes back with a powerful counter, leaving him stunned. He's still holding back, comments on his speed, but delivers a crushing blow. The crowd is stunned, witnessing the unexpected turn of events. He asks him if this was the right choice. Kogawa, defeated, grits his teeth and prepares for one final attack. But just as he lunges, she calls out her friend and he stops, delivering a final crushing blow to him. The crowd watches in stunned silence as the fight comes to an end. Amid the chaos, a bird observes everything and heads to inform its master. The master, already furious, warns the bird not to bring any useless news or he'll kill it. The bird informs him that 3 variants were killed by humans. The master, standing in anger, breaks a vase and orders the bird to call him when he is ready for the next door. At his house, he trains Yu in advanced fighting techniques, focusing on using her legs. She grins, asking if her fighting style is acceptable. He assures her that while her muscles are efficient, they are only on par with a top-tier athlete at best. When he asks if that's an insult, he seriously explains that she must surpass human limits, otherwise her body won't withstand attacks infused with magic. She is taken aback, questioning if he truly means surpassing humanity. He elaborates that excessive muscle mass will slow her down and references a respected scientist's similar philosophy, emphasizing that quality matters more than quantity. Holding a magical object, he asks if she wants to test it. She eyes the magic with curiosity, questioning his intent. He explains that muscle training with magic involves forcefully tearing muscle fibers. She becomes excited, confident in her training. However, his mind drifts to when he tested this magic in space days ago. After the incident at the Kendo dojo, she had insisted he train her, her enthusiasm unwavering. As training begins, she wears special gear and immediately feels overwhelmed. She quickly asks him to stop. Meanwhile, outside, people discuss the Kendo dojo incident, still in disbelief that Kazu took down Kakagawa so effortlessly. Rumors swirl that Kakagawa might be an infirmary. In the infirmary, Kakagawa sits with several girls, downplaying the incident, claiming he simply slipped. While he laughs it off inwardly, he curses him. As he casually complains about a bump on his head, another girl arrives, genuinely concerned. She gently insists he lie down and reassures him with a warm smile. More girls gather, eager to tend to him. He moves one aside, explaining that too much attention overwhelms him. The girl understands and they share a kiss. At that moment, he declares that she will be the one to take care of him, noting that the nurse won't be coming for a while. However, his thoughts darken and he wishes it were Yu instead. A sinister urge grows, filling him with violent, obsessive thoughts. Suddenly, the girl transforms into a variant and starts tearing him apart with her brutality. Back at Kazu's house, he sits deep in thought, reflecting on the effects of healing magic. Suddenly, Yu, in distress, calls out to him, apologizing in pain. He moves to help, reassuring her that this is enough for now. She warns him that prolonged exposure to such magic is addictive and could cause trauma. With a serious tone, he explains that if she endures this training 24/7 for a week, her body will adapt to withstand magic that would otherwise kill her. For muscle training, however, only small daily sessions are needed. Wanting to test for progress, he asks her to try a technique on a training dummy. As she prepares, she notices the recoil feels weaker than usual. He excitedly confirms that her muscle training is already showing results and urges her to use her full power. With hesitation, she complies, unleashing a powerful attack. The Shiratori family's custom dummy is destroyed instantly. She is amazed, feeling no strain, and he confirms that this is the effect of her training. However, he warns her against using the sacred weapon. She is confused, and he explains that it was poorly designed for user safety. If she continues using it, her body will break down in a few years, leading to her death. Stunned, he realizes this could be her downfall and blames himself for allowing it. She reveals that her father assigned her this mission, aiming to establish connections with anti-variant organizations for his company's benefit. He targeted a struggling Nordic organization, seeking control. He is shocked, asking if this means anti-variant groups secretly influence the world. She confirms it. She further explains that her father's company was inherited by her brother, while she, as an adapter, like her mother, was raised solely for combat. Realizing she has been used all along, he feels a deep sympathy for her. He declares that he cannot forgive the variants and forbids her from using the artifact. She protests, arguing that without it, she cannot fight. He firmly reminds her that he said for now, not forever, leaving her speechless. Suddenly, he grabs her leg, causing her to flinch in surprise. He reassures her that he is only making adjustments. Still wary, she questions what he is doing and asks him to stop. However, he insists this is a matter of life and death. Despite the discomfort, she remains still. He instructs her to maintain her magical output while he attempts to reduce the load but then considers overriding it with his own magic. Before he can act, a monstrous presence fills the room. A variant-like girl stands beside them, holding Kakago's severed head. They freeze in shock. The girl seems eerily familiar to him. But when he tries to recall details, his memory suddenly goes blank, sending a wave of distress through him. The variant smiles, trying to speak, but he realizes a horrifying truth. Variants use human bodies as vessels to manifest in this world. Yuga is stunned, stating that she was only taught that variants appear and devour humans. The girl casually tosses his head to the ground, leaving them in stunned silence. The overwhelming magical force fills the air, and he senses that interacting with it properly could change everything. He quickly tells Yu to step back. The variant transforms into a human-like figure, laughing. It mocks them, claiming they are the ones who defeated Will Carey. Both freeze, unable to comprehend the situation. A variant with intelligence like this is beyond anything they have encountered. Kazu realizes that this being possesses immense magical power, possibly at the level of the king. The giant-like man questions them about the door they mentioned earlier. Kazu, piecing things together, confirms that variants are indeed using humans as vessels. The giant then introduces himself as Thor and declares that they will now experience the wrath of the god of storms. A devastating surge of power erupts, shaking the entire area with destruction. As chaos unfolds, he coldly asks if they still fail to understand what they are dealing with. Kazu remains frozen, struggling to comprehend the kind of god they are truly facing. They stand before the giant, who questions them again. His words confuse them, and Kazu begins to wonder if this is what people refer to as a god. The giant smiles, amused, and asks if they can withstand his Mjolnir. He strikes the ground with his hammer, causing a massive shockwave. Kazu realizes that this giant is the one from Norse mythology. Yu, alarmed, explains the danger. The giant is an extraordinary variant, and the presence might have already drawn attention. She asks how he plans to explain everything to his family, but he insists that their priority is to learn everything they can from the giant. The giant then questions his humanity, warning him not to threaten a god. He gathers tremendous magical energy, and Kazu realizes that a blow from the giant could destroy the entire area. The giant dares him to withstand the strike, focusing power into his legs, not the hammer. Kazu compares it to a gunstar in his mind. She urges caution as the giant, who is curious about how a human could endure such power. Kazu, realizing that his weapon can stop the blow, strikes back, surprising both of them. He makes the giant question whether it was his weapon or the hammer's power that was stopped. He reflects on his connection with Kakagawa and his soccer background, but before he can think further, the giant bursts into laughter, finding the whole situation even more amusing. He tells him that the battle is far from over, then attacks again. Kazu's frustration builds, and he demands answers. He asks why humans are used as mediums for the gods. The giant explains that gods have always influenced the mortal world, but humans serve as portals for them to enter. He is stunned by this and wonders why humans shouldn't be summoning gods themselves. The giant explains that they don't know when or how they were summoned, but are driven by a constant, insatiable hunger. He adds that at his level, it's manageable. Kazu asks if a variant can avoid eating humans. The giant refuses, mocking his bloodthirsty intentions. The giant compares his rage to that of the gods when they are angered. Kazu draws his weapon again, but the giant smiles and announces that the real show is about to begin. She, now worried, calls out to him, who reassures her that his magical powers have greatly increased. He, now fully prepared, faces his next strike with confidence. As the giant strikes with immense force, he counters with his weapon and magic, declaring that he is the one who returned from another world. With all of his strength, he cuts the giant in half. The giant, now lying in pieces, compliments the sword's power and bids farewell, saying he will return with his full hammer power. She, still anxious, asks if he's okay. He seriously admits that he didn't expect a variant to use humans to enter the mortal world. He reflects on the phenomenon but doesn't understand the reasoning behind it. He mentions two classmates, one who's already gone and the other a variant in human form who joined their class. He feels the memories of them slipping away. She, troubled, wonders what her family would think if they knew the truth. He's sensing the growing tension, suggests they will meet again tomorrow. However, she stops him, wondering if defeating the variants could change their fate. He, deep in thought, realizes that this might also mean the death of his friend. Meanwhile, outside, people discuss the giant's shattered body, baffled by the situation. They speculate that a relic user could be responsible and worry that their food supplies might be depleted, especially with the cafeteria already struggling. Kazu is resting on the school rooftop, deep in sleep. In his dream, he's lost in a forest, preparing for a confrontation with a devilish god. His friend approaches, asking why he seems so scared. He reassures her, telling her everything is fine, and she smiles, reminding him that he promised to protect her. Suddenly, someone calls his name, and he wakes up, realizing it was just a dream. His friend stands before him, looking surprised that he's been sleeping through class. She hands him a PS device, saying it will help them stay in contact during their battles. He is confused but listens as she explains that it will allow them to send emails and messages. When he tries it out, a loud sound echoes, and he realizes he's somehow created a shift magic detector. Meanwhile, in the variant's colony, a girl is dragged by Loki, a dangerous variant, into a settlement. She asks him where they're going, and he casually mentions they're heading to a great place. When they arrive, she's shocked to see it's an old, damaged building. He and his companions begin to feast on her, ripping into her chest, discussing how they'll divide her into 3 parts while she screams in agony. Back with Kazu and Yu, he detects magic from 3 nearby variants using the PHS. Despite the weak reactions, he figures they'll need to focus to locate the variants. He carries her to a location where a powerful mage known for illusion magic resides. Upon arrival, the strong scent of blood fills the air. She is furious, vowing vengeance on the variants. He, in a serious tone, mentions a sacred weapon. Before they can prepare, a variant approaches her, ready to strike. She takes the matter into her own hands and defeats the variant effortlessly. Kazu is impressed by her strength and remarks that her strikes are highly effective. As they discuss the situation, 2 people approach and observe them. She comments on the intelligence of one variant. Loki, now fully transformed into a monstrous form, mocks them for their surprise. He asks if they'd like him to turn the cafeteria into something grander. They are left speechless, unsure of what's happening. She asks Loki about the people he kidnapped, and he casually reveals they've been eaten by his allies, showing them a human hand. She, enraged, charges at him, but Kazu tries to stop her. She ignores him, and when she attacks, she fails and is knocked down injured. He, deeply worried, tells her to stay back, realizing the variant is on a different level. 2 more people arrive, revealing they were the ones who sent Thor back. Loki silences them, claiming it's been a long time since he's had such a fun meal. Suddenly, he attacks him with his sword, landing a deep blow that causes Kazu to bleed heavily. She screams, but he assures her that his weapon only cuts living beings. Loki taunts him, saying the curse is strong enough to immobilize even the giant wolf Fenrir. Kazu, barely able to stand, uses his magical powers to heal himself completely. She watches in disbelief as he explains he's dealt with similar situations in his previous world. He warns her not to speak of sincerity and strikes a powerful attack on him. With a quick maneuver, Kazu defeats him, who, before dissipating into smoke, reveals that things aren't as he expected to hear. The onlookers, deeply affected by his victory, begin clapping. They praise him for defeating his government without his sacred weapon, calling him a magician from a story. Despite their praise, he knows these people are slaves to the variant. He remarks that they must be from the Nordic side, realizing this is their greatest misfortune. Just as the realization hits, she calls out to him loudly, snapping him back to the present. The variant rises once more, expressing regret for being different from the others. Before he can react, it vanishes in an instant, like the wind. He's left stunned, unable to track its movement. Just as he regains his bearings, the variant strikes him with incredible force, sending him crashing backward. Blood pours from his wounds as the wall behind him shatters upon impact. Kazu realizes that this is more than a mere matter of speed or physical presence. His very existence has been altered in this strange, fantastical world where anything is possible. There is one magic, however, that even the greatest archmages believe to be impossible: instantaneous teleportation. As he struggles to his feet, the man in front of him speaks, commenting that what stands out isn't his strength, but his separation from everything else. Kazu, confused by this statement, asks for clarification. The man seems impressed by his resilience, acknowledging that he withstood an attack from a godly domain and still managed to rise. He expresses high expectations for him, though the latter still doesn't fully understand what's being said. The man suddenly bursts into laughter, asking him what kind of CHUUNIBYU level technique he's using. She, hearing this, is taken aback and asks what kind of illness it refers to. Kazu, with irritation, tells her it's not at that level yet. She understands her concern, turning into a brief, understanding silence. He, now serious, points his weapon at the man, demanding to know who he is. He insists on a detailed explanation. The man finally reveals that he is Susanoo, a god from Japanese mythology. At that moment, his servant steps forward, telling him to stop joking and asking what he had said to him. Kazu, upon seeing the two of them, is struck by the realization that they are working together. Susanoo addresses the woman, referring to her as the fairy tale wizard. He suggests they save their proper meeting for another time. Kazu is left feeling helpless and deeply confused. The term fairy tale wizard feels strangely familiar, but he can't quite place why. Lost in thought, he is shaken from his reverie by Yui, who notices his state and asks if he's all right. He reassures her that he's fine and explains that Gungnir was actually Susanoo. They begin discussing what this means. They realize that the man they encountered is indeed a god from Japanese mythology. They also uncover that factions exist within the variants. He goes on to explain that during the teleportation, he felt something like when he tried to recall Yui and Kahugawa, a blank spot in his memory. He reflects deeply on the god's domain and the immense power it holds, pondering if this is the key to understanding the mysterious abilities of the variants. Later, the scene shifts to his house, where he wakes up feeling the effects of overusing magic. His mornings have become harder, and as he struggles to get up, his sister, Futaba, notices how exhausted he looks. She remarks on his tiredness, shifting the conversation. He tells her that the Shiratori family investigated the people from yesterday, but no useful information was uncovered. She teases him, suggesting he spent another night playing games, and adds that she wants to play one too, possibly meeting the host. As he reflects, he suddenly remembers that it's 1997, the year PlayStation finally surpassed Saturn. Just then, Yui arrives there, calling out to him. His sister tells him to take care of himself before leaving. He walks over to Yui, and she asks if his sister had been there. He confirms, saying she left a while ago. However, he remains distracted, wondering if he has been distancing himself from her. He then gets serious and explains that the Shiratori family, being focused on Nordic matters, isn't equipped to handle Japanese variants. They couldn't even track them using magic detection. He suggests they seek help from a Japanese anti-variant organization instead. Their conversation is interrupted when a new teacher enters the classroom, announcing that he's taking over for the previous teacher, who was suddenly hospitalized. He directs his attention to Kazu and informs him that he will be teaching modern Japanese literature. The teacher introduces himself as Narayama and smiles, reassured that any questions can be asked freely. However, Kazu gets an unsettling feeling about him, sensing that something is off. As evening arrives, the sky is painted in breathtaking hues of orange and pink. Despite feeling as though he has lived for thousands of years, he still finds the sight mesmerizing. Just as he prepares to leave, his new teacher calls him over. There is something unsettling in the man's tone, as if he has sensed something unusual. He meets his gaze with equal seriousness, questioning his intentions. As the conversation unfolds, he pieces things together. The man before him is not who he claims to be. He is Susanoo. The revelation startles him, and he immediately wonders what he is planning. The thought of the entire school being taken hostage crosses his mind, but he only laughs, amused by the idea. He comments on his surprisingly violent imagination for someone so young, making him suspicious. It almost feels like he knows his secret. But before Kazu can dwell on it, he dismisses his concerns, stating that he didn't come here for mere entertainment. With an unsettling smile, he presents a small vial, requesting him to trace its origins. The moment Kazu lays eyes on it, he feels something unusual. Magic lingers within it, though its nature is unclear. Susanoo explains that the drug is a stimulant designed specifically for variants. The information shocks him, leading him to suspect that he may possess a divine artifact. He confirms that he is well aware of the person he encountered the previous night. He reveals that he had been infiltrating the Nordic faction, which had been distributing these drugs. His goal was to get closer to the organization and uncover more about the variants. However, due to last night's incident, all the leads he had gathered were destroyed. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Kazu questions his true objective. Instead of answering directly, Susanoo shifts the conversation, asking him if he has someone important to him. An unexpected question catches him off guard. He denies having anyone significant, but he doesn't seem convinced. He hints that revealing such a person's existence could be dangerous and casually wonders how that important person is doing at this very moment. A chill runs through Kazu as he realizes that Susanoo might be referring to Yu. Meanwhile, outside she is lost in thought, worried about him and whether he can handle everything alone. Memories of the powerful variants from the previous day replay in her mind. Before she can think further, a dangerous variant suddenly appears, calling her name. Panic surges through her as she struggles to comprehend why this creature is here. The variant lunges, but she swiftly activates her Gungnir power, retaliating with a powerful attack. Despite her efforts, the variant strikes back, sending her sprawling. The strength of the attack is far beyond what she expected. Realizing the threat, she immediately switches to edge mode. Kazu arrives just in time, positioning himself between her and the variant. He apologizes for the delay and checks if she is hurt. She, though slightly bruised, insists that she could have handled it herself. Amused by her stubbornness, he simply smiles. Before they can recover, Susanoo appears once again, casually complimenting his combat skills. He acknowledges that the variant was low-level, yet its power was considerable. His irritation flares up once more at the sight of Susanoo. His anger is evident as he demands to know what Susanoo really wants. He finally explains his objective. He needs him to infiltrate a cafeteria suspected of distributing these drugs. Since food is involved, it would be the easiest way to gather information. He also mentions that he doesn't want to lose someone important, referring to the strongest wizard. Kazu quickly realizes that his true interest lies in Yu. Understanding that his perfect teleportation ability makes him nearly untouchable, Kazu knows that any direct confrontation would be useless. His thoughts shift to her safety. If Susanoo is involved, she might be targeted again. The realization fills him with frustration. He warns him that as long as he follows orders, there must be no harm done to anyone. Otherwise, he will not hesitate to kill him. Susanoo agrees without protest. As they walk away, she questions whether they made the right decision. She wonders if pursuing Susanoo is the correct path. He, though uncertain, tells her that for now it's their only option. Her disappointment is evident as she apologizes, worried that she might be holding him back. The thought surprises him, and he struggles to find a response. However, he understands the danger of becoming someone's weakness. He reassures her that he doesn't see her as a mere monster or a burden. If anything, by following him, they might uncover something important about the variants. Elsewhere, Susanoo speaks with his servant, who questions his decision to cooperate with humans. He insists that they are worth testing. His partner warns that one of their own, Koshi Nadasan, is strongly opposed to humans. He dismisses her concerns, making it clear that if she doesn't want to return to Takamagahara, she should remain silent. Later that night, Yu finds herself in a bustling nightclub. The atmosphere is overwhelming, and she feels strangely out of place. A man approaches her, offering her a drink, which only adds to her confusion. She isn't sure why she is even here, dressed like this. Meanwhile, Kazu, disguised and working under his orders, navigates the club. He approaches someone, casually asking if they need anything from his partner. After gathering some information, he spots her and notices her acting strangely. When he asks, she responds with bizarre questions, making him suspect something is off. He eventually admits that he drank beer out of habit and ended up throwing up. She, momentarily distracted, questions what kind of habit that is. He turns his focus back to his surroundings. He studies the club, trying to determine whether it is truly a cafeteria for variants or just an ordinary nightclub. According to him, once a month, this place attracts various types of variants who gather to eat. If drugs are being used here, this could be their best chance to uncover the truth. Despite their efforts, nothing suspicious has surfaced so far. As he continues analyzing the situation, she suddenly calls out to him. Before he can react, she steps in closer and begins asking personal questions. He tries to maintain distance, but she doesn't back off. She insists on getting closer to him. He, confused by her behavior, attempts to stop her, but she ignores his protests. Then, without warning, she asks if they can share a kiss. Kazu is completely stunned. He is caught off guard when she asks again if they can kiss. He's confused, but quickly understands why she's acting this way. Gently, he reassures her that he'll kiss her, and she beams with joy, urging him to give her many kisses. They kiss, but after a while, she pulls back, confused by the suddenness of it all. He points out that everyone around them is kissing, hinting that they might be in a cafeteria where this sort of thing happens. As the two of them look around, they realize that the strange behavior is likely the result of the drug they discussed earlier. He recalls his earlier reaction to it. He threw up because his body's magical resistance rejected it. She now understands why she felt strange. However, he admits they kissed just moments ago, making her both embarrassed and surprised. He then explains that to remove the magic from her body, he had poured his magic into her mouth directly. She is still in disbelief and feels embarrassed by it. Before they can continue discussing, a large monster appears. He quickly shifts into battle mode, telling her to prepare as their enemies approach. He explains that the drug makes humans intoxicated and causes variants to become uncontrollable. They quickly realize that the cafeteria is filled with this drug, serving dual purposes. He defeats the monster with a powerful magic attack, but more monsters appear in the area. He senses that someone is behind all of this, pulling the strings. With 20 more variants left to deal with, Kazu decides to split up and asks if he can trust Yu. Hesitantly, she agrees. They part ways, racing against time. After a long and exhausting battle, he steps outside to find a woman standing before him. She introduces herself as Kabutsuchi, a servant of Lord Susanoo. She asks about the situation, and he tells her that they have eliminated the variants and the humans inside are unconscious. He offers her a vial of the drug, telling her it's a freshly acquired batch still carrying strong magical traces. He suggests Susanoo will have no trouble tracing its origin. She thanks him but then asks if he's not curious about him and is so fixated on this drug. He, surprised, asks why she's suddenly sharing her troubled boss's concerns. She then reveals that his wife, Lady Kushinada, was killed by humans. He is shocked, thinking of her as a figure from Japanese mythology. She explains that Kushinada was a variant with a fragile body, always protected by him. When he left on a mission, humans took advantage of the opportunity to abduct her, using the drug to strip her of her freedom and eventually killing her. As Kazu processes this revelation, Yu arrives, telling him that the humans inside are regaining consciousness. He assures her he'll be there soon. Just then, his servant informs him that the humans responsible for framing him and killing Kushinada belong to the Japanese anti-variant organization. She requests his help for Susanoo. After she leaves, he stands silently, deep in thought, realizing the weight of what he's just learned. He knows that the decision ahead is his to make. Meanwhile, Susanoo stands lost in memories of his time with his wife. He recalls their peaceful moments together, gazing at the moon as she gently expressed her hope that human-like emotions might one day become real. He's brought back to the present when his servant enters, reporting that she has traced the origin of the drug and located the hideout of the organization responsible. Smiling, he agrees it's time to retrieve their child. Back with Kazu, he wakes up with a sharp headache, wondering if it's from the effects of the drugs. He heads to his sister's room, but she isn't there, which puzzles him. It's unusual for her to not be around, especially when she normally wakes him up. Worrying, he inspects the house and notices a toy emitting strange magic. He realizes it's a remnant of magic, likely his sister's danger detection magic, which has been forcibly removed. Shocked, he realizes that someone must have used perfect teleportation to abduct her Susanoo. Meanwhile, Susanoo has tied his sister to a tree, treating her coldly. He tells her that she just has to wait a little longer. Kazu rushes to save his sister, but before leaving, he informs Yu that Susanoo has abducted his sister. His serious tone deeply worries her, though she struggles to believe it. As he prepares to leave, he warns her not to fight alone no matter what happens. Shocked, she urges him to wait, but he cuts off the communication without listening. When he arrives at his territory, he finds him already expecting him. With a smirk, Susanoo remarks on his swift arrival, which only fuels his rage. Kazu demands to know where his sister is. Susanoo plays coy, pretending to wonder where she could be, further infuriating him. His anger builds as he reminds him of his warning that if he ever harmed a human, he would kill him. Susanoo remains calm, acknowledging the threat, but remains unshaken. Unable to control his fury, Kazu attacks with his magic, only for him to effortlessly block the strike with his divine weapon. With a swift motion, Susanoo delivers a devastating blow to his chest, stopping him in his tracks. He explains that this is God's domain, absolute realm, a power that renders all attacks useless. With the Kusanagi sword in hand, he is invincible in close combat, able to cut through anything with ease. Taken aback by the overwhelming power, Kazu begins analyzing the situation. He realizes that healing the damage he just took drained a significant portion of his magical energy. He also understands that his strength rivals that of the Demon King from another world. Amidst his contemplation, Susanoo speaks again, suggesting that he must realize fighting is pointless. He proposes an alliance to destroy the anti-variant organization, catching him off guard. Conflicted, Kazu recalls the information his servant once shared about his wife and wonders if he is seeking revenge. As the pieces fall into place, he understands that he has taken his sister hostage to force him into an alliance. Despite the growing tension, he maintains his composure. However, when Susanoo waits for his response, his anger erupts. He understands what he is trying to do and without hesitation, attacks. This time, his strike manages to wound him, causing blood to spill from his body. Susanoo, unfazed, smirks through the pain, acknowledging his persistence. He admits that his power is impressive, but reminds him that no matter how many times he tries, this power cannot be defeated. Blood drips from his mouth, but he remains calm, telling him that he has been merciful until now. Undeterred, Kazu speaks with newfound clarity, explaining that he understands his magical ability. He describes it as causality interference magic, an advanced form of rewriting events. Susanoo smiles knowingly and affirms that his understanding is correct. After much contemplation, Kazu asks if he is truly controlling existence itself. With a cryptic laugh, Susanoo acknowledges his insight, admitting that this is indeed the work of a god. He mockingly asks what he intends to do now that he knows the truth. Kazu rushes forward with full intensity, his words sharp as he explains the limitations of this power. If he could easily eliminate someone, he would have done it already. He adds that activating the power requires only a slight movement, and if blocked, it cannot be rewritten. With resolve, he strikes, landing a blow to his chest. Despite the pain, Susanoo smirks, impressed by his strength. He acknowledges that he has surpassed even his former partner, Yamato Takeru, and assures him that he would be pleased to see this. Suddenly, he bites down on his weapon, shattering it, and a blinding light erupts from within. Kazu watches in shock, unable to comprehend what is happening to his power. Then before his eyes, Susanoo reveals his true form, long hair, an eerie appearance, and a solemn expression. He declares that he has not taken this form since defeating Orochi. Without hesitation, he swings a massive sword at him, and radiant energy bursts forth from all around him. His eyes turn white, and with an intense glow, he asks if he has ever lost someone important. His voice filled with despair, and he questions the purpose of gods like him, why they descend into the human world to consume humans. In deep sorrow, he demands to know why his wife was killed. His grief and fury distort the battlefield, shaking the very fabric of reality. Yu, a concern for him, arrives at the scene and notices intense light rising from the sky in all directions. She's puzzled, wondering if it's a magical force blocking recognition or an obstruction created by the variants. She doesn't waste time contemplating and heads straight for Susanoo, her worry for his friend growing. Meanwhile, a fierce battle rages between them. His powerful attack leaves Kazu severely injured, his clothes torn. He reflects on the magical barriers surrounding him, amazed that everything has shifted in an instant. He stands, struggling to comprehend the situation, and tells him it feels like being crushed by a steamroller. Susanoo, perplexed, doesn't quite understand, but he continues, revealing that his Kuzengaji strike felt like it was imbued with the power of Tsurugi. He explains that he withstood it only because of the heavenly clouds gathering around him. He, a bit taken aback, moves closer. Kazu, growing anxious, fears the worst. He knows he can't handle another attack. Susanoo, however, suggests that he join forces with him to destroy the anti-variant organization, but Kazu, furious, strikes back. Susanoo declares that he has no mercy for those who defy his commands. This is revenge against humanity itself. Despite his pain, Kazu realizes there's no turning back now. He remembers Susanoo once calling him the most powerful magician and vows to show him his true magic. His eyes turn white and a powerful wind swirls around him as he unleashes a strike at him. He explains that while he's not skilled in advanced elemental magic like fire or ice, he's mastered a form of basic magic akin to Causality interference magic. Susanoo, still confused, asks about agility, and Kazu, with a hint of sarcasm, explains that it's the ability to move quickly. Before Susanoo can react, he moves first, launching his super lightspeed slash. At 300,000 kilometers per second, it's a speed even a god can't stop. He watches as he is sent flying back, stunned by his own power. But the battle isn't over. He, weakened and on his knees, reveals that he's created a magical defensive barrier strong enough to withstand light-speed movement. He explains the combination of mental synchronization, physical enhancement magic, and advanced combat spells that form his ultimate defense, one capable of defeating even a god. Despite this, Susanoo rises, much to his shock. If this magic couldn't defeat him, then there's only one conclusion: his own defeat is inevitable. Angered, Susanoo stands, admitting that for a moment he made him question if he could defeat the god of war. He begins summoning his legendary powers, prompting him to recognize that he's witnessing something massive, perhaps the highest level of magic. He, in awe, asks if he believes this power is as immense as it seems. Kazu, furious yet helpless, watches as he declares he can reshape existence with complete control of the world. Just as Susanoo prepares to strike, a woman descends from the sky and strikes him in the chest. She tells him she's been waiting for this moment, leaving Kazu stunned. He wonders if she's his servant. She reveals that she's been working with the Japan Anti-Variant Organization, the same group he serves, and their goal is to eradicate the variants. Susanoo, enraged, listens as she explains the old god's ways are outdated. The future for variants, she insists, lies in alliances with humans. He, bleeding, asks if it's truly possible to work with humans, and she confirms it. This revelation fuels his anger. He roars, preparing to attack her. Kazu retaliates, determined to stop her, and the two clash. She, with anger, counters his assault, revealing she never intended to work for the variants. This infuriates him, who lashes out, vowing that she must not be left alive. He intensifies his attack, using chains to bind her, reaching his limit. But suddenly, she laughs, revealing her plan has succeeded. She's destroyed them both, and by handing them over to the Japanese organization, she'll secure her position. Just as the situation seems dire, Yu arrives, activating her magic. He, exhausted and still reeling, looks at her in surprise, wondering what will happen next in this chaotic turn of events. She activates her Gungnir power as soon as she arrives, launching a powerful attack. In her frustration, she tells that while she didn't want to involve him in this battle, she simply can't forgive the variants. After attacking, she heads towards him, who is severely injured and sitting weakly. She's surprised to see him and lovingly calls his name, gently cupping his face. She asks him how he fought alone, getting so battered in the process. They exchange meaningful words, and she looks deeply into his eyes, questioning if she wasn't his partner. Why didn't he involve her in the battle? His eyes widen as his memory clears up, and he recalls how he always pushed forward alone. His comrades had told him to trust them just a little. Suddenly, it hits him that he's made the same mistake with his friend. She tearfully vows never to fight alone again, no matter what happens. He realizes his mistake, apologizing earnestly. She assures him it's not his fault, and they share a quiet moment of understanding. He thanks her for saving him. Just then, a swift attack from Kankotsuchi approaches her, but he steps in at the last moment, blocking the strike with his weapon. He's injured in the process. She, concerned, asks about his condition, but the servant, enraged, demands to know how a mere human dares to interfere with divine weapons. She threatens that their battle isn't over yet, and she'll devour them all. Yu, now furious, challenges her, asking if she'd like to test that theory. She strikes back fiercely, knocking the servant back, but the woman, undeterred, declares that it's all futile. Meanwhile, he rushes to her side, reassuring her to not push herself too hard. Suddenly, Kankotsuchi stands tall, declaring that it's the end for all of them, smiling as she grips her weapon. As Susanoo regains his composure, a powerful light erupts from him, streaking through the air, leaving his servant stunned. The light surprises everyone, and she asks if he's truly releasing his sacred power. She then inquires whether he plans to take her away. A storm brews around them, and Kazu rushes to Yu, checking if she's okay. She reassures him that she's fine, but he grows worried about his plans. The woman is defeated and falls lifeless to the ground, transforming into smoke. Before completely vanishing, Susanoo mentions his beautiful wife, telling her they'll meet again. Kazu, deeply moved by concern for her, rushes to her as Susanoo smiles and sarcastically remarks that it's shameful for a young girl to have saved him in this battle. Kazu, not bothered by the comment, asks him to tell him about his sister's whereabouts and the information he holds. Susanoo leads them toward her location, and as they follow, he suddenly apologizes for his actions and confesses he never meant to cause them harm. He reveals his true intention to work together with them to destroy the anti-variant organization. Time is running out, so he hastily explains that his sister is a member of this organization. Kazu is shocked, questioning how this is possible, and asks her if it could be true. She confirms it, explaining that there are rumors the Japanese anti-variant group conducts health checks under the guise of monitoring those using divine weapons. She admits she never imagined his sister could be one of them. He, confused and worried, asks him why he kidnapped his sister, if she truly is part of the organization, and if they were using her as bait. Susanoo, with little time left, expresses regret and apologies, telling him that his final request is to save his sister. He dies, turning into smoke, leaving behind his sorrowful Kazu, who calls out desperately. He continues calling out, desperately pleading for mercy and urging those in power to save the weak and vulnerable. But his pleas seem to fall on deaf ears. As he reflects seriously, he realizes that the situation has changed his sister. Suddenly, her consciousness returns, and she calls out to him. Seeing her awake, he is overjoyed and begins to ask about her well-being. She mentions a slight pain in her shoulder, but reassures him that she is fine. She, in turn, starts asking about his injuries and condition, but he tries to comfort her. She refuses to believe that he is fine, given the extent of his injuries, and begins asking serious questions about what's happening. He takes her to a safe location and, with gravity, explains that the variant group had abducted her, and she had been unconscious in their custody. His sister is shocked and asks how he knows this. He calmly responds that he was aware of it. Concerned, she blames herself for his injuries, but he reassures her, telling her it isn't her fault. She insists that she cannot accept his explanation, given how badly hurt he is. But as she questions him further, he reveals that she has been part of a Japanese anti-variant organization for a long time. He looks at her in surprise as she suddenly uses her power, saying that for now, her first aid is complete. She explains that healing the surface is far more powerful than the restoration magic of a simple magician. Meanwhile, a group of older men arrives, and one of them, an elder, speaks seriously about the Japanese anti-variant organization, or Yamato, a group involved in resistance movements against powerful organizations. His mind recalls a conversation with Susanoo, who had mentioned their plan to work together to destroy the variant organization. The elder explains that Yamato is more than just a resistance group, it's a well-established and secretive organization. He confirms that his sister has been a part of his organization for some time. Startled by this revelation, Yu begins asking more questions about her involvement. The elder asks if he is aware of the struggle the organization faces. They insist that they will help him understand everything and encourage him to join the fight against the variant group. Kazu, determined, agrees to their terms. The elder is pleased with his decision and assures him that he will take care of them both, providing the support they need. While this conversation unfolds, his sister grows increasingly concerned about the risks involved. Yu decides to accompany him, eager to know more about this organization and its true motives. The elder, however, tells her that it's better if she stays behind. He insists that negotiations should be left to the leaders and only with their approval should they proceed. Kazu, after some thought, decides to accompany his sister and follow their guidance. He understands the seriousness of the situation and, despite his doubts, agrees to let the elder show them the way. During the visit, he tries to distract his sister, who seems lost in thought. She confesses that she never wanted him to be involved in her troubles, apologizing for not being able to save him. This makes him realize how she saved him from another world. After all this, they arrive at a large, well-guarded building. He feels the weight of the place. It's clear that this isn't just any ordinary facility. It's a place filled with power and secrets, seemingly beyond his understanding. As they enter, he becomes more aware of the vast resources at play here. He wonders just how much funding the anti-variant organization has and what their plans are. He feels a mix of awe and frustration, unsure of what lies ahead. Another man, a leader within the organization, welcomes them. He introduces himself as Kizo Ibushi, the foreign minister, and with a smile expresses how honored he is to meet them. Kazu is shocked by the gravity of the situation. He has no idea how deep this organization's influence runs, and he starts questioning what the future holds for Japan in this struggle.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand,